So text properties. We've gone through the most basic primary box properties. Now we're just going to cover some of the text ones. You'll see that there are a few less of these. So the text at its most basic is the content, right? That's inside of the box model. And just like we have ways of controlling the box, we have ways of controlling the text as well, all right? So from some of the most obvious is the font family, right? So the typeface that it will display. Now, by default, what you're going to find is you write font family, okay? And then you'll notice when you see this example here, it says Times New Roman, then it says Times, and then it says serif, and then the semicolon. The reason why it's written like that is that I might, on my computer, have a font, let's say Roboto, okay? If I place that font on my website and I send it to you and I write Roboto up here, and that's all that I write, when you see it, if your computer does not have that typeface, it's going to have to put something generic in there instead, and then it might not be formatted the way I liked it. It might visually, the aesthetics of it might be off. So it's not a good idea to just put the one typeface. So usually what you do is you start with the most specific typeface, the one that you want it to be first and foremost. But it might be, a little more niche, not as popular. Then what you do is you put the next one. So if they don't have Times New Roman, just grab Times, right? That's a little bit of a broader swatch, right? First try Times New Roman. If they don't have that, do they have just Times? And then if they don't have Times, use a serif font, right? Because Times is a serif font. So it'll use a generic serif font. And then we could have the opposite up here where it might be like Arial Black. Then it'll be like, you don't have Arial Black, then do Arial. And then if it doesn't have Arial, we'll just say sans serif. Okay? Don't worry about writing this, at least initially, because what we're going to do is we're going to type it up and it will automatically fill out that for us. But just be aware that that's why there are three. It's just so that there are options. And it just works its way down. There's some other ways also that will be able to use more interesting typefaces using third-party CDNs and stuff. Okay. The next is the font size, right? So we want to be able to determine the size of the typeface that itself, right? So we can say what size we want the text to be. It can be done through pixels, through percentages, through EMs, and again, EM is the size of the default letter. So, for instance, if the current default of the text of a P element is 16 pixels, if I use 2EM, it's going to make it 32 pixels. So it means it's going to make it twice the size. Okay, so it's going to make it that many pixels. A lot of times EM is kind of a good standard to go by. And then there's also VW, which is it's an abbreviation for viewport width. And this one's the newest one. Basically, every number is 1% of the screen. So if we do 10 VW, it's going to be very large. It's like 10% of the screen. Okay, so if you look at here, you can see I just did a straight pixel amount. For what we're doing here, because again, we're doing fixed width, we're going to go ahead and use pixels for all of it. But later on, you'd want to use something that's more responsive that will scale with the page, considering what you're dealing with. The other thing I would also suggest about font size is I would try to not overly adjust the the typeface, font size. The reason being is you should allow an H, what is this, an H3, right? This is an H2. I should allow the H3 to be the size that it should be, and an H4 to be the size that it should be, and then the paragraph to be the size that it should be. Because otherwise what will end up happening is if I start scaling this one, that ends up being bigger than this one. There's already a sort of hierarchy built into the HTML itself. You should try to utilize that. Now, if you want to broadly set up settings for all of your H1s through H6s and your paragraphs and your quotes and links and so on and so forth, that's fine. But you want to make sure you do all of them so that they are organized in a similar way as these.